How do I remove myself from the search engines? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. Here's a question I got. It was unwise of me to put my name in some guest books. I'd like to remove my information from the search results of the major search engines, Google, Yahoo, and so forth. I tried in vain to contact the webmasters of those sites. I'm becoming fussier about this, and it's getting more awkward as far as my profession is concerned. Would you please assist me in dealing with this problem? Search engines are amazing. They've collected and indexed billions and billions of pages of information out on the internet, making them available for us to find and review and use. Getting into the search engines? Not particularly difficult. Getting out? The news is not good. In fact, in my opinion, it is a lost cause. We think of Google, Bing, and maybe a couple of other name brands as being the search engines. But in reality, there are hundreds or thousands of search engines busily indexing pages on the web. Some have special purposes or a limited audience, but all have the potential to index and list the pages you're concerned about. The number only skyrocketed when AI services entered the picture. Any of them could have a listing for your name. Reaching out to all of them is somewhere between impractical, there are too many, and impossible. There's no master list. Even among the search engines you do reach out to, most will not respond. There are several reasons for this, but perhaps most importantly, they don't have the time or resources to prioritize removal requests. Google may be huge and have lots of resources, but other search engines, not so much. And they don't have the facilities to handle the extra validation required to prove that you are you and thus that you have the right to remove something from their lists. So they ignore all those requests. The part that probably frustrates me the most, though, is this concept that removal from search is not removal from the internet. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of just how the internet works. Search engines don't hold the information about you. They merely index and point to the websites that do. Even if you successfully remove yourself from a search engine, you have not removed that information from the internet. It's still on the original site, waiting to be found by other means, such as other search engines. For example, let's say I post an article about you here on askleo.com. Eventually, you search for your name on Google, and sure enough, the results include my article. Now, let's say you successfully petition Google to remove that entry from the search results. When you Google yourself, my article about you no longer appears in the search results. But it's still here. You have not removed the information about you that was publicly published on my site. At best, you've made it a little bit harder to find, but it's still quite findable. Perhaps via Bing, perhaps via foreign search engines, but the information is still there for anyone to see. It sounds like what you really want is to ask the site owner, me in this example, to remove the posting about you. That too has issues. Rather than removing yourself from the search engines, it seems to me that you want to use those search results to identify the websites that contain your information. Then you could reach out to each one of those sites and ask that your information be removed. If they did, then over time the search engines would update to reflect that your information has disappeared from the source. That's what you really want. You don't want to be removed from the search engines. You want to be removed from all the sites that they point to. Unfortunately, there's no requirement for any of those sites to honor your request. They could ignore you. They could reject your request. Heck, they could even take your request as a reason to highlight your information rather than remove it. Here on Ask Leo, I've occasionally responded to requests to remove comments people have left in the past. There's no requirements that I honor these requests, but I see no reason not to. But it's still not enough. Websites, particularly popular websites, are constantly being archived and copied. There are two types of duplication at play here. Archiving, sites like the Internet Archive, actively scan the internet regularly, and as the name implies, they archive copies of websites and pages. It's a great way to look back and see what a website looked like in the past. Many search engines also maintain older, I'll call them cached copies of pages that they've scanned. The other is plagiarism. The fact is, there are bad players out there who copy or steal content and repurpose it for their own uses. Any moderately successful website faces this issue. The result? Even if a website removes your information at your request, archived or stolen copies of older pages may still be found. And while archives may or may not be responsive to your requests for removal, the thieves rarely are. The brutal fact is this: once something has been published publicly on the internet, you lose all control over it. You can't unring a bell. There are too many ways information can take on a life of its own. Between the various forms of information duplication and indexing, it's pragmatically and quite possibly literally impossible to guarantee removal of anything from the internet. The internet never forgets. Great. If it's so hard to make things disappear from the internet, then why is it so difficult to find what I'm looking for? Reasonable question. Sadly, the two are really only loosely related. Looking for something means searching through billions and billions of pages on the internet. Your success depends on how well you use search engines and how findable that information is. Removing something also means searching through those billions and billions of pages and asking the owners to delete whatever you're trying to get rid of. Even if only one trace is left, it might not be easily findable, but it is still out there, ready to be stumbled onto. Just because you can't easily find something doesn't mean that someday someone won't. Now, with all of this, it's a bunch of background information. I hope you understand how misguided these so-called right-to-be-forgotten laws are. Right-to-be-forgotten legislation aims to require search engines to remove entries from their search results based on whatever criteria the law spell out. Not only does the internet never forget, via archives, caches, hundreds of different search engines, and so on, but on top of that, the laws don't have global reach. A law requiring that a search engine result be removed in country A has no bearing on country B. That the laws are misguided is putting it mildly, and honestly, too politely. The Streisand Effect. I have to mention this because it really does illustrate just how bad things can get. In 2003, actress Barbra Streisand attempted to suppress photos taken of her home. The net result was that those photographs got even more public attention than they would have had she just said or done nothing. This unintended consequence of bringing more attention to something by the act of trying to suppress it has become known as the Streisand Effect. It happens all the time, especially online. A currently more common example? Say a public figure publishes an embarrassing tweet or photo and then deletes it. Within moments, archives or screenshots of that item, often taken from individual browser caches, appear and start to replicate all over the internet. Again, you can't unring a bell. Even trying to do it can unintentionally create even more noise. So what do? Well, besides protecting your information so that it doesn't get published online to begin with, something that is not always in your control, there's honestly little you can do to remove something that you don't like. At best, you can make it more difficult to find. If that's something you consider that worth the effort, fine, but realize that whatever it is you're trying to suppress is very likely still out there somewhere. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/2450. If you've got a question, visit askleo.com/ask. If you're interested in subscribing to my weekly Confident Computing newsletter, askleo.com/newsletter is the place to go. And if you're interested in helping keep Ask Leo running, visit askleo.com/patron for a menu of possibilities. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is AskLeo.com. Thanks for watching.